Hi everyone, Sian here at Counting What Counts. I am creating some videos today running through how to set up an evaluation on the Culture Counts platform, and I have reached the design page. You can see up here the design page. So let's get cracking on this. So if you have copied a survey from an evaluation template, then there will be questions that have automatically populated in here for you. Okay, now it is entirely up to you if you choose to explore additional questions. You can see over here on the left hand side there are lots of different types of questions, or if you just want to leave it as it is and not make any changes. And if that is the case, you can just click save and continue and go straight on to the next page. However, I know there are lots of you out there that would like to add some of your own questions. And actually, I would really encourage you to do that, because the questions that are already in there are useful for your Arts Council mandatory evaluation reporting, or for whichever other funder it is that you are reporting back to. However, we know that there are things that you will want to know specifically about either this event, or certain things that your organisation deems to be really important for your development. And that is exactly why you are able to add further questions. This is a flexible tool, and so whilst we would recommend that you don't remove any of these questions, because these are the ones that Arts Council have requested that you use, I would also encourage you to think about any other questions you might want to add. So I'm just going to go through some of these options that are available to you down the left-hand side. Of course, if you have not copied the survey from a template and you have just created a survey from scratch, there won't be questions here. Okay? The only ones that will automatically populate are these three: postcode, age, and gender. These are the three questions that automatically populate in any survey that is created on the Culture Counts platform. So, to add a question, all you would need to do is to click on the question type that you want to add. But before I do that, I will just go through the different options that are available. So the first thing to mention are the dimensions. Now, as many of you know, that is sort of the USP really of the Culture Counts platform, is that we have all of these tested dimensions available for you. So what is a dimension? It is a standardised statement that has been developed in a collaborative way with the arts and cultural sectors, as well as funding bodies and academic bodies. So altogether, they have worked to come up with these statements that people are able to use across the Culture Counts network in order to see to what extent people respond in certain ways to certain types of events. So it's a really interesting thing to explore. You will see that there are 6 already included in this particular survey. These are the ones that Arts Council have pre-selected for your evaluation. But you probably want to have an explore and see if there's anything else in there that you would like to include. And I would encourage you to do that. Demographic questions. So as I've said, there are 3 demographic questions and they are automatically added to your survey. Experience questions. So these are questions that are also inbuilt to the system. They are the NPS, so Net Promoter Score question, and also an overall experience question. So these are really useful questions and they have been designed and inbuilt to the system to enable standardised reporting. So it's all about basically making it simpler for you. So I will go back to those in just a minute. Here we have questions that are not inbuilt, okay, so they are completely custom questions, and you can add however many you wish. Of course, we would recommend that you do keep the survey reasonably short, just to avoid your respondent from experiencing survey fatigue. But equally, we know that you will probably want to add a few of your own things that are really important to your organisation. So the main thing I suppose that I want to say about these is that the difference between drop-down and multiple choice is that with drop-down, the respondent can only select one option. So that might be good if you have a question that says something like, how did you get here today? And there's car, bus, train, walk, whatever it is. Because there will only be one way in which you arrived at the venue. Unless, of course, I suppose, you took multiple methods, and then you could have another option in your drop-down list that said multiple. Okay, so you see what I mean, that you can only select one. Multiple choice, however, means that you can select multiple options. So, say, for instance, you had a question which says something like, what motivated you to attend this event? Okay, and then you could have all different reasons such as personal development, professional development, enjoyment, somewhere to take my children, a fun day out, whatever it is, you could have multiple options in here and the respondent would be able to select as many as they wish. Short text question. Now, this is particularly good if you are just wanting to grab a quick snapshot. So, something that is quite popular is this one here that I have in the template. Please write 3 words to describe your experience. Okay, so it's a short space for people to write short answers, but they are not pre-described. Okay, it is entirely up to the individual which words they write. Another popular question that can go in here is something like, what is one standout feature of this event or this exhibition or whatever it is? That's another popular short text question. Now, the good thing about short text questions is that because they are designed to only capture very short and sharp pieces of information, the Culture Counts platform will generate graphs that demonstrate the frequency of the words that have been used. So that's really interesting because they aren't pre-described and it is entirely up to the individual as to which words they write. It's really interesting to see which words have been frequently used, if any. And then below that we have free text. Now, free text is what we would recommend if you want to encourage a longer piece of writing. Okay, so you'll notice that in this public survey template, there are no free text questions. You see how it's that slightly larger box with the 2 lines? We have no free text questions because actually in this instance, I want to just keep it really sort of short and snappy. However, in a peer or self survey, then you might want to have a larger space for somebody to give feedback. Or else, you might want to have that in your public survey. It is entirely up to you. What I would say, though, about the free text question is that you will need to download the raw data in order to see the results. Whereas with short text, you get the graph. As you can imagine, if somebody is encouraged to write a longer section, a longer paragraph perhaps of text, then graphing that with frequently used wording would be a bit a bit bizarre because you would probably have lots of words like and the that would have really high frequencies. So it probably wouldn't be very useful, to be completely honest. So the free text responses are to be downloaded in a CSV format. Then we also have message. So message is a really good, I'm going to say question type, although it's not really a question, so that's what it's content. It's a really good piece of content if you are wanting to add a little bit of context perhaps, to the questions, or if you want to ask somebody to sort of switch their thinking. So one survey that I use, for instance, I have a message at the beginning which says, the following questions will be about your experience at the library in general. And then after a few questions about their library experience, I then have another message which says, thank you for that information. You will now be receiving further questions, and these are specific to the workshop you attended at the library. Okay, so you can use the message to sort of give context and to advise the respondent on how to respond. So that's where message is really useful. Email. Now, the email question is a really good question for, as you can imagine, collecting email addresses. It won't accept a response without the @ symbol, so it's quite good for ensuring that you don't get, sort of erroneous data in there. However, what I will say here is that the email responses will be downloaded separately to the rest of the raw data, and they will also be muddled up. Okay. Now, the reason that is that if you download the raw data with the email addresses within it, then obviously that means that the responses alone are no longer anonymous. So if I had given, let's say, I gave everything a really low score, and also put in my email address, then obviously the person that is sort of managing the survey will be able to see that my email address is associated with all of those really low scores. This way, when one downloads the email addresses and they are muddled up, there is no way of knowing which response goes with the email addresses. I hope that makes sense. But so something that I would recommend here is that you only use the email field once. Okay, otherwise you will get a little bit confused. So for instance, you might say something like, would you like to sign up to our mailing list? And then, if so, please enter your email address. Okay, so just a one-off email question where it doesn't matter what the responses to other questions are. That's what I would suggest with regards to the email address question. Okay, so I'm going to just delve a little further into the dimension questions. Click on this. There are a variety of different categories of dimensions. So we go here. And you can see here, dimension category. There are quite a few different types of dimension categories. The most popular ones are probably under cultural experience. And you will see that a lot of them are already in use. However, there are others that you might want to choose. So for instance, enthusiasm, I would come to something like this again. That's really popular. And it's clear to see why. Also, when something is, site-specific or isn't touring, something like cultural contribution, that's another really popular one. So there are some really good dimensions available to you, which I would really encourage you to have a look at and to think about if it is something that you would want to explore further. So for the purpose of this, I am going, because this was a festival, for those of you that don't know, that have only joined partway through this, my event that I am going through the process of setting up a survey for is a festival, an outdoor festival. So I'm going to go on cultural contribution. Okay, so that's the one that I want to use. You select a dimension and you will see that you get a nice preview on the right hand side of how it will look. And here is the information about it. Now, if it were a prior survey, maybe for self-respondents, you could have this. You could change the tense to be future and have I expect it will provide an important addition to the cultural life of the area. However, as I've said before, this is a public survey and I just want it in this format, in the present format. Okay. So I'm going to click Save and Close. And you will see that it has now been added to the bottom of my question schedule. Now, I think that it would fit a lot better with the other dimension types. So I'm going to use this little arrow button to pop it underneath. Okay, so you can really easily change the order of questions. Something else you can do is, if you wanted to, you can even duplicate questions. Okay, now this isn't something that is used very often, but I wanted to point it out because it is something that you could do if you wanted to. There is also the ability to remove the question entirely by using the little dustbin icon. Now, as I've mentioned before, if you are using a template and that template has been designed with funding requirements in mind, such as the Impact Insight Toolkit, Band 2 and 3 MPOs, that sort of thing, then you won't want to remove any of the set Arts Council questions. Okay, so as I've said before, this is a flexible tool, and so therefore you do have the ability to remove them, but we would ask that you please don't. Now, something else that I haven't mentioned so far, but which I will drop in here, is that there is also the ability to use survey logic. Now, that is something that I would suggest that you explore if you want to have things such as having a question displayed on the condition of something else. So for instance, you see this little blue squiggle? That tells me that question logic has been enabled. This question, if you would like to tell us how you self-describe your gender, please do so in the box below. That has been set up so that if somebody responds to the gender question with "in another way," they then get this option to self-describe. Okay, that's a Stonewall recommendation to ensure that people do have that option to self-describe, and so that's why I think it's really important that we do implement it here. So you can just to show you what it looks like, I've clicked on that question where I can make amendments. On the logic, you can see here it says show this question when, and then this is what you want to test it against. The response to another question, which is how would you describe your gender, is equal to "in another way." Okay, so there is a video specifically on using question logic, which you might want to explore if this is something that you are interested in. But for the purpose of this video, I'm going to close. It is a really useful feature though, so if you want to look at it in more depth, please do. So I'm also going to show you how the experience questions work. So as I've said, there are two different experience question types: Net Promoter Score and overall experience. Now for the purpose of this, I'm going to go for Net Promoter Score. So this is using standardized wording. However, you are able to change the subject type, which I think is a really good thing, because it means it just makes it feel so much more personal to your event. So I'm going to say, how likely is it that you would recommend my event, the festival, because it was a festival, to a friend or colleague? Okay, so the rest of the wording is standardized, but you are able to add this little bit of customization, which I think is a really good thing. Save and close. And again, you'll see it's been popped at the very bottom, and I'm just going to drag it up here. I think it fits better there. Okay, so that's how my survey is now going to appear to anybody that clicks on the link. So I'm happy with this. You can see that I've got the dimension questions. So I haven't removed anything that was in the template. I have just made a couple of additions. Okay. And that's something you might want to think about doing, all dependent on, of course, your event, your organisation, what's important to you, and your respondent types. So now I'm going to click Save and Continue. And this will be the end of the design video, and we'll be moving on to the invite video. So thank you very much, everybody, and I'll see you soon.